Don't count on me for Sunday dinners anymore, Mom. We'll be in touch. David's words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. My hand clutched the phone so hard my knuckles went white. I felt my heart skip a beat, then another. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. David. My voice a brittle whisper. You can't be serious. I am, Mom. Jessica and I talked, and we need this space. Understand? When he hung up, I just stood there in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, as if somehow he might take it back. Say he was kidding. The wall clock Frank fixed weeks before he died kept its relentless ticking. 25 years raising that boy alone, and in 10 seconds, he dismissed me like an unwanted subscription. I put the phone back on the hook and looked at the counter. The chocolate cake I'd just baked to take to Leo on Sunday was sitting there, still warm, filling the house with that smell that always made David run to the kitchen when he was a kid. Now, he didn't even want me crossing the threshold of his home. You must be wondering how we got to this point. How could a son I rocked through fevers, whose scraped knees I kissed better, whose dreams I supported with every last penny, just cut me out of his life like this? Everything truly started changing about 6 months ago, right around Leo's 5th birthday. I organized a small surprise party at my apartment. Nothing extravagant, just a homemade cake, a few balloons, and a special gift. An album with old photos of David as a child, so Leo could get to know a bit of his father's history. When they arrived, Jessica looked around like she'd found a hair in her soup. Susan, we agreed on just lunch, not a party, she said, taking off Leo's coat. You know we don't like sugar for him. It's just a little cake, Jessica. Once won't hurt, I argued, while Leo looked at the colorful balloons, wide-eyed with wonder. Grandma, is all this for me? He asked, his little eyes shining. Before I could answer, Jessica interjected. It's not your birthday, Leo. Grandma got a little carried away. David just stood by the door, holding a wrapped gift I knew was for me. Probably another scarf or shawl Jessica had picked out, just like the last 3 years. Mom, you knew Leo has a dye intolerance? These sweets. He gestured to the table, where I'd placed some homemade chocolate treats. They're homemade, honey. I made them with semi-sweet chocolate, no milk, just like you mentioned last time. Jessica rolled her eyes. Even so, Susan, we have a very specific diet for him. During lunch, I tried to keep the conversation light. I asked about David's work, about Leo's swimming lessons. Jessica answered in monosyllables, checking her phone every 5 minutes. I have a gift for you, Leo, I said when we finished eating. I handed him the photo album, hand-bound, with a dedication on the first page. To my dear grandson, so you can know your father's roots. Leo opened it with curiosity, but Jessica quickly took the album from his hands. What's this? She flipped through the pages with a frown. They're photos of David as a child. Look, here he is at Leo's age, at the park near our old house. David came closer, looking over Jessica's shoulder. I saw a flicker of emotion in his eyes as he recognized some of the images. Remember this one, honey? It was your 7th birthday. Your dad had just fixed that red bicycle. For a moment, David smiled. That genuine smile I rarely saw these past few years. I do remember. I fell off it the same day and Dad got so mad. But then he taught you how to get back up and try again, I completed, feeling that momentary connection between us. Jessica closed the album with a snap. I think Leo's too young for this. He might tear the photos or spill something on them. But I want to see, Mommy. Leo protested. "Another day, sweetheart. Now let's get ready to go. We have that appointment, remember?" There was no appointment. I knew it. David knew it. Even Leo seemed to know it from his confused expression. But no one contested. As they were leaving, I handed David a bag with containers of frozen food. Meatballs, lasagna, that chicken casserole he loved as a teenager. "Mom, you didn't have to." "I know you two are always rushing, honey. It's just to make things easier in an emergency." Jessica took the bag and placed it in the corner of the entryway. "Thanks, Susan, but we have a nutritionist who prepares our weekly meal prep. Balanced diet, you know?" After they left, I sat alone in the living room, watching the balloons slowly deflate. I realized something fundamental had changed. It wasn't just Jessica building walls. David was letting her, even helping. In the following weeks, my calls started going to voicemail more often. Sunday visits, which used to be sacred, became rescheduled, then canceled last minute. There was always an excuse. Leo had a cough. Jessica needed to prepare a presentation. David had an emergency meeting. One day, I decided to show up without warning. I brought homemade soup, thinking maybe Leo really was sick, as David had said when canceling our visit. When I arrived at the condo complex, the security guard blocked me. "Susan, your name isn't on the list today." "What do you mean? I'm David's mother, Leo's grandmother." "I'm sorry, ma'am. I have express orders to only allow authorized visitors." I stood there, holding my cooling pot of soup, as I digested the humiliation. I called David, who answered after several rings. "Mom, is there a problem?" "I'm here at your building's front desk. The guard won't let me up." Silence. Then, "Mom, today isn't a good day. Why didn't you call ahead?" "You said Leo was sick. I brought soup." More silence. I heard voices in the background, laughter. I recognized Jessica's parents' voices. "We have company, Mom. Jessica's parents are here for Sunday lunch." It felt like a slap in the face. Her parents could come to Sunday lunch, but I needed prior authorization just to enter the building. "I understand," was all I could say. "Can we reschedule for another day? Maybe next week?" "Sure, honey. Sure." I drove home, the untouched soup on the passenger seat, a cold metaphor for my love. Offered, rejected, slowly growing cold. It was after that episode that things got worse. David started talking to me like he was fulfilling an unpleasant obligation. In our last in-person conversation, when I finally managed to see them at a mall, neutral territory as Jessica preferred, I noticed Leo started calling me ma'am instead of grandma. "Who taught him to call me that?" I asked David when Jessica took Leo to the bathroom. "Mom, don't start. Jessica thinks it's important for him to address adults formally. But I'm his grandmother, David, not a stranger." He sighed, that heavy sigh of someone carrying a burden. "Look, Mom, Jessica has specific parenting methods. She reads a lot about it, takes courses. We need to respect that." "And what do you think? Don't you have an opinion?" His face hardened, a wall going up between us. "We're raising our son the way we think is best, if you can't respect that." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The message was clear. Either I played by their rules, or I wouldn't have a place in that family. And then, we got to that call. To those words I never imagined hearing. "Don't count on me anymore." Now I'm here, sitting in the armchair where I'd rocked David so many times, looking at the photos I'd turned face down, because I couldn't bear to see his face smiling at me, confident that I'd always be there, while he didn't hesitate to push me away. The phone rings. It's Michelle, my daughter. She's called every day since I told her what happened. Mom, how are you feeling today? I take a deep breath before answering. How do I explain this emptiness? This feeling that I failed at something fundamental, even though I gave everything? I'm existing, honey. I talked to David yesterday, she says, hesitant. My heart quickens. And? He said you don't respect their boundaries, that you always question their decisions about Leo, that you show up without calling. Michelle, you know that's not true. I know, Mom. I know it's not true. I told him that. You know what he said? That Jessica gets stressed with your visits. That Leo gets dysregulated afterwards. Dysregulated, as if my love were a toxin. What do I do, honey? I ask, feeling the tears I swore not to shed today forming again. I don't know, Mom. Honestly, I don't know. But I know you don't deserve this. After we hang up, I go to the kitchen. The chocolate cake is still there, untouched. I pick up a knife, cut a slice, and put it on a plate. I sit at the table, alone, and take a bite. It's sweet, soft, exactly how David liked it. I remember him at 4 years old, his face smeared with chocolate, saying, "It's the best cake in the world, Mommy." The tears fall silently as I eat. Each forkful is a memory, each memory a small death. When I finish, I wash the plate, put away the rest of the cake. I pick up the paper and pen again, the ones I'd set aside to write Leo a letter. But instead, I start writing to myself. "Dear Susan," I write, "you did the best you could. Always. And that needs to be enough now. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if David will ever truly understand what he did. If Leo will grow up without knowing the unconditional love of his grandmother. Or if Jessica will always see me as a threat to be contained. What I do know is that tomorrow the sun will rise again. And that, at 67, maybe it's time to learn that when someone tells you, "Don't count on me anymore," the only dignified response is, "Then I'll count on myself." The phone rings again. I glance at the caller ID, expecting to see Michelle's name pop up. But it isn't her. It's David. My hand hovers over the receiver, trembling slightly. Should I answer? What more could he possibly want to say that he hasn't already communicated with his silence, his absences, his cutting words? I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th, I pick up. "Hello? Mom?" His voice sounds different, lower, almost a whisper. "We need to talk." I take a deep breath, clutching the phone tightly. What now? More boundaries? More rules? Or maybe, just maybe. But I don't allow myself to hope. Not anymore. "I'm listening, David," I reply, as the letter I started writing to myself waits, unfinished, on the kitchen table. "Mom, He hesitates, and I can hear his ragged breathing. "I shouldn't have said that to you. The words just... I don't know how to explain it." I stay silent. How many times have I heard half-hearted apologies, promises that dissolved like sugar in hot water? "Jessica isn't home," he continues. "She took Leo to swimming lessons, first period. I needed to talk to you alone." "Why, David? To tell me you're sorry but nothing's going to change?" My voice comes out firmer than I expected. I surprise myself with this new strength that seems to have bloomed from the arid soil of rejection. "No, Mom. First period." He pauses for a long moment. "I found the photo album you gave Leo. Jessica had tucked it away at the back of the closet, but I was looking for some documents, and I found it." My heart aches. That album I'd put together with so much care, hidden away like something shameful. I spent the whole night looking at the pictures. He goes on. I'd forgotten so many things. Remember that time I had chicken pox and you slept sitting in the chair next to my bed for 3 nights straight? How could I forget? David was 8 years old, running a high fever, crying in pain from the blisters covering his little body. I worked during the day and kept vigil over his sleep at night, applying soothing lotions, telling him stories when he couldn't sleep. I remember, son. There's a picture in there. Me sleeping and you holding my hand, your head resting on the edge of the bed. Who took that picture? Your dad, I reply, the memory coming to me as clear as if it were yesterday. Frank came home late from work and found us like that. He said he needed to capture what real love looked like. I hear a muffled sound on the other end of the line. Is he crying? My David, who since adolescence refused to show any fragility, especially after his father died. Mom, his voice cracks. I don't know what happened to me. How could I say that to you? Don't count on me anymore. Who says that to their own mother? I close my eyes, feeling the weight of those words again. But now, mixed with the pain, there's something different. A small openings where a sliver of light can enter. Son, what's really going on? It's not just about my visits or how I raise Leo, is it? Silence. Then, like a dam finally given way, he begins to speak. Jessica and I haven't been doing well for months. She has very rigid ideas about everything. About how Leo should be raised. About how we should live. About who we should see. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Because... He hesitates. Because I'm ashamed, Mom. Ashamed to admit that my marriage is falling apart. Ashamed of how I've let her control everything. Even my relationship with you. I recall a 16-year-old David sitting at the kitchen table after failing math. He'd hidden the bad grades for months, afraid to disappoint me. Son, do you remember what I told you when I found out you were hiding those bad grades in high school? He lets out a sad chuckle. That you'd rather have an honest, failing son than a lying, passing one. Exactly. And that hasn't changed, David. I'd rather know the truth, however painful it is, than live in this limbo of not understanding why my son is pushing me away. I know, Mom. I know. There's another silence. Longer this time. When he speaks again, his voice is different, as if he's made a decision. Can I come over? Now? We need to talk this out properly, not over the phone. I look at the clock. It's almost 5 in the afternoon. The chocolate cake is still in the kitchen. Come on over, son. I'll put on some coffee. 40 minutes later, I hear the doorbell. My heart races as if I were a teenager waiting for a boyfriend, not a 67-year-old woman receiving her 42-year-old son. When I open the door, the sight of David hits me like a punch to the gut. He looks like he's aged years since I last saw him. Deep circles under his eyes, disheveled hair, an expression of weariness that goes beyond the physical. Hi, Mom, he says, standing on the threshold as if unsure he's still allowed inside. I open my arms without saying a word. For a moment, he hesitates. Then, like the little boy who used to run into my arms after falling off his bike, he steps forward and hugs me. It's an awkward embrace at first, as if we've forgotten how we fit together. But then, something gives. His shoulders begin to tremble, and I feel the dampness of tears on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Mom, he murmurs between sobs. I'm so sorry. I lead him inside, into the living room where he grew up. The photos I had turned face down are still like that, silent witnesses to my pain. We sit on the sofa side by side. David looks at the turned frames and understands immediately. He picks one up, him at 5 years old, dressed as an astronaut for a birthday party, and places it back upright. "I remember this day," he says, tracing the image with his finger. "You sewed that costume by hand because I'd seen it in the store and you couldn't afford it." 3 nights hunched over that scratchy silver fabric, I confirm, smiling at the memory. "You didn't take it off for a week. You even slept with the helmet on." He smiles, but it's a sad smile. "How could I forget these things, Mom? How could I let—" He doesn't finish the sentence, but he doesn't need to. I go to the kitchen and come back with 2 slices of cake and 2 cups of coffee. I place everything on the coffee table. "Eat a little, son. Then we'll talk." He looks at the cake as if it were an artifact from another time. He takes a piece with his fork and brings it to his mouth. His eyes close for a moment. "Just like I remembered," he says, and there's something broken in his voice. We eat in silence for a few minutes. It's a different kind of silence than the one that has settled between us in recent years. Not charged with tension or resentment, but with recognition. Of 2 people trying to find their way back to each other. When we finish, David places his plate on the table and takes a deep breath. "Jessica wants to move to Canada," he says abruptly. "She has a cousin there who offered her a partnership in a company. She says it's the perfect opportunity for Leo to get an international education." I feel as if the ground has vanished beneath my feet. Canada, halfway across the world. "And you, what do you want?" He runs his hands over his face, a gesture that reminds me so much of Frank that it almost hurts. "I don't want to go, Mom. My life is here. My job, my friends. You." He pauses. "But she insists it's best for Leo. And when I disagree, she uses you as an example." "What do you mean?" "She says I'm just like you. Stubborn, old-fashioned, stuck in your ways. That if I really cared about Leo's future, I wouldn't hesitate." I feel a wave of anger rise in my chest. So that's it? I'm used as the negative example, the model of what not to be? How long has this been going on, David? It started subtly, right after Leo was born. At first, it was small criticisms about how you raised me. "Your mom gave you too much sugar." "Your mom was overprotective." Then, it got worse. He stands up, restless, and walks to the window. He looks out at the street as he used to do when he was a teenager, thinking I didn't notice him watching girls pass by. 3 months ago, we had a huge fight. I told her I didn't want to go to Canada, that I saw no point in uprooting Leo from his school, his friends, that you'd be alone. He turns to me, his eyes red. "She said I needed to cut the umbilical cord, that as long as you had influence over me, our marriage would never truly work, that I needed to choose either the family we've built or you." The cruelty of that ultimatum hits me like a physical blow. What kind of person forces someone to choose between their mother and their wife? Between their grandmother and their grandson? "And you chose," I say, not as an accusation, but stating a fact. He bows his head. "I thought I had no choice, Mom. Leo is my son. The idea of him growing up away from me. I understood that better than anyone, David. Didn't I spend my whole life putting my kids first? Didn't I give up relationships, better job opportunities in other cities, little pleasures, all just to be there for them? But then," I continued, "why are you here now? What changed?" He sat back down beside me, closer this time. Last night, after finding that photo album, I stayed awake just reliving everything. How you worked 2 jobs and still found the energy to help me with homework. How you saved all year to get me a special Christmas gift. He took my hands in his. They were warm, rough, a man's hands, not the boys I once knew. And then I realized I'm doing exactly what I promised I'd never do. Remember when Dad died? I was 12. The night of the funeral, I couldn't sleep, so I went to your room. I remember it perfectly. David standing in the doorway, his eyes swollen from crying, his pajamas too big because they were Frank's, and he insisted on wearing them. You told me, "Mom, it's just the 3 of us now. I promise I'll take care of you and Michelle forever." He nodded, eyes welling up. And look what I'm doing. Pushing you away, letting Jessica treat you like an intruder, letting my son grow up without knowing the incredible grandma he has. Son, you don't have to. Yes, I do, Mom. I need to say this. He squeezed my hands tighter. Last night, after Leo fell asleep, I talked to Jessica. I told her we're not moving to Canada, that if she wants to go, it'll have to be without me and without Leo. I felt a mix of pride and worry. And how did she react? Just as you'd imagine. Said I was sabotaging our son's future. That you'd manipulated me my whole life and were still doing it. She stormed out and went to her parents' house. Oh, David. No, Mom. Enough. I spent years trying to please Jessica, giving in to everything to keep the peace. But there are limits. And she crossed all of them when she tried to push you out of my life. I looked at my son. Truly looked. And saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Determination. The same kind he had at 16, when he decided he'd get into engineering school, even if he had to study twice as hard. "What's going to happen now?" I asked. "I don't know for sure. We'll probably separate. It'll be hard, especially for Leo." He hesitated. "But I wanted to ask you something." "What?" "Those Sundays. Can we start them again? Leo asks about you, you know? When Jessica isn't around, he always asks when Grandma's coming to visit again." I felt my heart expand, as if it had been compressed for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe fully. "Of course we can, son. My door's always been open." He smiled, a genuine smile this time. "I know it won't be easy. Jessica won't make co-parenting simple, and we'll have a lot of battles ahead. But I want Leo to have you in his life. I want him to know what unconditional love is." In that moment, looking at my son who had finally found his voice, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't naivete. I knew there would be difficulties, that Jessica wouldn't give up easily, that Leo might be confused by the changes. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. "You know what else made me come here today?" David asked, breaking the silence. "What?" I remembered something Dad always used to say. "Remember? In life, son, you can lose money, a job, even friends. But family is forever." Frank, my Frank, speaking through time, through our son. "Your dad would be so proud of you today, David." He wiped away a stubborn tear. "I think so too. It took me a while to understand, but I finally did." That night, after David left, promising to bring Leo over on Sunday, I sat down at the kitchen table again. The letter I'd started writing to myself was still there, unfinished. I picked up the pen and, instead of continuing, I turned the page. I started a new letter, this time addressed to Leo. My dearest Leo, when you read this letter, you'll probably be a young man already. Maybe you won't remember all the times we spent together when you were little, or the stories I told, the cakes I baked. But I want you to know that, even in the times we were apart, you never left my heart. Not for a single second. Your father was a sensitive and brave boy who grew up to be a man of character. Today he showed me once again why I've always been so proud of him. Life, my dear Leo, isn't always easy. Sometimes people we love hurt us. Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions. But there's one thing I've learned in my 67 years. True love always finds its way back. Your father found his way back to me today, and I promise you that as long as I live, you will always have a safe place in my heart and in my home. A place where chocolate cakes are allowed, where old stories are told, where hugs are given without moderation. A place to call your own. With all my love, Grandma Susan. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into the desk drawer. Someday, I'd give it to Leo. But for now, it was enough to know that I'd have the chance to build memories with him. Real memories, not just the ones I'd imagined while looking at his photos from afar. The following Sunday, at 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there was David, holding Leo's hand. "Grandma!" the boy shouted, pulling away from his dad and running into my arms. I knelt to greet him, feeling his warm little body against mine. The scent of kids' shampoo, the vibrant energy only children possess. "I brought you a drawing," he said, holding out a colorful piece of paper. "It's you and me and Dad making a cake." I looked at the drawing. 3 stick figures, one small, one tall, and one with gray hair, all gathered around what looked like an oven. Above them, in crooked, colorful letters, family. I looked up at David, who was watching the scene with an emotional smile. "Thank you, Leo," I said, kissing the top of his head. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever received." "Dad said we're making cake today. Can I help mix?" "Of course you can, sweetie. I have all the ingredients waiting for you." As Leo ran inside, exploring the house he barely knew, David came closer. "He hasn't stopped talking about coming here all week," he said softly. "Jessica tried to convince him to go to the water park with her and her parents, but he insisted he wanted to see Grandma." "How are things between you two?" He sighed. "Difficult. She's living with her parents for now. Hired a lawyer. It's going to be a custody battle." "You'll win, son. I'm here for whatever you need." He smiled, that smile that reminded me so much of the boy he used to be. "I know, Mom. I always knew. Deep down." From inside the house, we heard Leo's excited voice. "Grandma! Come on! I want to make cake!" David and I looked at each other and laughed. There was so much ahead. Difficult conversations, legal agreements, adjustments. But in that moment, with my grandson calling me from the kitchen and my son by my side, I felt like I could finally breathe again. "Let's go," I said, taking David's hand as I did when he was little. "We have a cake to bake." As we walked together to the kitchen, I thought of the words I'd heard just a few days ago. Words that had wounded me deeply. "Don't count on me anymore." Now those words seemed to belong to another life, another time, because the truth I'd always known, and that David had finally rediscovered, is that real family always comes back, always finds its way home. And when Leo, his face already smeared with chocolate, looked at me with the same eyes David had as a boy and said, "I love you, Grandma," I knew that no matter what came next, we'd face it together. Because now, finally, we could count on each other again.